Hey folks, this is Rich and you're with South Florida Beekeeping with Rich. So it's swarm season, which means that for me it's mad scientist season, because when swarms are coming in hot and heavy like they are here, this is the time of year that I take to do experiments of various sorts. And what I want to try this spring, because serendipity, one of our club members got a hive from me last year, and she didn't have any medium frames to swap me, so she actually bought me a set of 10 medium frames, waxed too. And while this may look old, trust me, it was brand new before I put my propolis stuff on it. And so I decided that, well, they're saying that if you put a nice heavy coating of wax on the foundation, that they draw a foundation almost as well as they do foundationless. Now, I've always been a foundationless beekeeper. The one big disadvantage, there's so many advantages to it, but the one disadvantage to being foundationless is that they get to draw all the drone comb they want wherever they want. And that means they tend to draw 15 to 20% drone comb. Whereas when you give them foundation, they tend to draw 5 to 10% drone comb, which of course would slow down the swarming impulse, among other things. And it takes about 5 times as much energy to feed a drone brood through to a mature drone than it does a worker bee. And that's a significant amount of resources. So I decided I want to try 2 things with one of the swarms this spring. The first thing I wanted to do is I took those 10 frames with foundation in them. I took the foundation out. I used hot wax and roller, kind of a Cayman Williams style. And I put a nice thick coating, Cayman Reynolds, sorry, not Williams, Cayman Reynolds style, and put a nice thick coating of wax on them and popped them back in. But more importantly, while I had them out, I set my belt sander in my vise. And maybe I didn't film that because didn't know if it was going to work or not, and it worked perfectly. But my thought had been, rather than going through some crazy setups with a table saw, why don't I just touch these frames either side to a 100 grit belt and just do that on all 4 edges and see how that worked out. Well, if you'll see, it worked out just fine. There's 9 frames in that 9 frames in an 8 frame box, and a little bit of space on the side for, moving your frame edge around. So 9 frames in an 8 frame box. The point being behind doing that is, again, 1 3/8 inch centers is a compromise. Brood really likes a 1 1/4 inch center. Honey likes a 1 1/2 inch center. So I wanted to make a brood box up of 1 1/4 inch centers. And thinking about that, it made me start thinking about, well, then how about instead of the drone cone just being laid helter-skelter throughout the box, how about I try making some of these frames for Varroa control. And so that's what I've just done here, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, some people say the easiest way to do this is just to take another top frame, or a top rail, cut the wings off, and put that around the other side. But that seems kind of wasteful to me. Wasteful is just not in my vocabulary. I used to do deep beekeeping, and I had lots and lots of deep frames that I cut down to mediums. When you cut deep frames down to mediums, you've got bottom rails, which I trim in each case to be just the right width to go in here, because when I'm doing that, cutting a deep frame down to medium, I then drop that piece back in and nail it in. But I always have some leftovers. Here's some leftover. So, and I like to overdo things whenever possible. Everybody says, oh, you don't really need to even put anything on the bottom. Well, I did. So if you want to come in on that, you're looking at 2 skinny Chinese bamboo skewers. sideways. All right. Okay. I had the good luck of at a thrift store one day. I bought 5 packs of these bamboo skewers for $4. Kind of thought I might be using them, you know, this way, the skinny ones. Now, if I'd had these thick ones, I would have preferred to use those, but I don't happen to have any thick ones. I use what happened to be on hand. What's on hand is these 12-inch skewers, which aren't long enough and are on the skinny side. But here's how I set them up.
What's the glue?
Just take my Tite Bond 2, my glue of choice. Take 2 skewers, reverse them.
So the points are inside.
So the points are to the inside. Because you saw one of the one you just took a close-up of was actually a pretty terrible one because the one of the points stuck up. But you know what? That don't matter. So that's what I'll do. Tite Bond. Like I say, I have complete faith in Tite Bond glue because I've tried knocking apart 2 things that I put together with Tite Bond and the wood fails, not the glue joint. So doing this, I know that I'll have the run. So I had some old deep foundation. Yeah, I could have cut it to medium size foundation, but I instead cut them to 2-inch. This is all based on the scientific beekeeping research. And what they came up with is that bees, for whatever reason, like to put a little bit of regular brood or honey above the drone comb. And to make sure that they do it where we want it, it was highly recommended that you put a small piece of regular foundation up there. And I'm following the logic of that pretty well, because the first thing I was thinking, of course, was, well, why don't I just get some of the green drone comb? But a full frame of green drone comb. Now you figure each piece of foundation has 2 sides. So you have, in an 8-frame box, 16 sides. And if you're replacing 2 of those 16 sides, again, 1/8, whichever way you want to look at it, with drone comb, that's 12.5%. That's more than I want, and they may not decide to do it that way with that much of it anyway. So again, this is experiment season because I have swarms that I can experiment on. So at any rate, step 1, rip some foundation into 2-inch strips. Pop the 2-inch strip in. This just popped into place. It's tight there. I'm going to put the old inset piece there. This is going to go like that. And this is all I'm going to do that. Again, I have great faith in Tite Bond 2. And for the coup de grace, just a dab will do you in the corners. Set that to dry, cure up, and we're done. We have a small amount of regular comb above. Well, hopefully they will just draw the drone comb, and I will. Oh, and I also, of course, green being the color of drone comb, pretty well standardized now. I painted the top of these green, so I'll always know which one it is.
How many in a box?
How many in a box? 1 in a box. One per box at the edge of the brood nest, probably in position 7, maybe position 6, whatever. And if you If the bottom of a 2-stack, it's on this side, then on the second box, you put it on the other side, but put it just beyond the edge of the brood nest, so the queen is sure to wander over there. Hopefully they draw out regular comb in there for us, and they start drawing out brood comb below that, because once you start using this, you do have to do some good record keeping. I would recommend, what I'm going to do is cut apart a bleach bottle into strips of plastic, and I'll write the date that I put one of these in, because it must be checked. In some parts of the country in 21 days. I would highly recommend here in South Florida, with our South Florida mutts, our partially Africanized bees that do tend to have a shorter cycle to mature. I would think I'm gonna mark on to check the condition of those frames at 18 days instead of 21. And if they're mostly capped at 18 days, then that's when I cut them out and let them start over again. And the purpose of that is that most of the research would indicate that Varroa mites have a preference for drone brood that, depending upon who you ask, is anywhere from 8 to 12 or 15 times as likely to be in your drone brood as it is to be in your worker cells, if there's drone brood available. The problem is that with the foundationless beekeeping that I love so much, is that you get a patch of drone brood here, a patch of drone brood there. Now, I use this tool, and when I pull out a frame and I've got a whole bunch of drone brood in there, a nice sized clump of it, I simply tear the tops of them off with this, and hopefully they're not replacing them. They're pulling out the larvae and removing any mites that are on there. But I watched some recent videos where they opened up some drone brood like that, and the mites crawled right out and right over, and the bees were paying no attention to the mites that were crawling out of the cell, and starting to look for another spot. So I'm thinking that my technique for ripping the tops off of those is not nearly as effective as I thought it was, and that it'd be better to just slice these out and remove them. Now, on the other hand, if they put honey up here and not brood, then I can just put it in the freezer, bring it out, rip the tops off, but then after it's been in the freezer a couple of days, the mites are dead, and I can put it back in, and I can save them the effort, and we can have a quicker turnover on replacement laying. But that's just going to come along as it comes along. This is spring. This is the time to experiment with new ways of doing things. So I'm doing these things together, 9 frames in an 8-frame box, closer together, so that they're strongly encouraged just for brood down here, not honey mixed in with it, and to make sure they have a place to put their drone comb. I'm going to put one of these on each box that I do like that, and we're going to see where that takes us. It may be that after all these years of being foundationless, I might start going foundation, which would be a surprise to me, but I have to see what works for my bees where I am. So that's it for now. There'll be some fun videos coming up here soon, because I've got swarms to be manipulated in various and sundry ways, and we'll be doing some videos on that in the near future. But for now, that's South Florida Beekeeping with Rich. Everybody have a great afternoon. Take care.